In this video, we're going to be going over TFIDF optimization, which stands for term frequency inverse document frequency. If this sounds confusing, don't worry about it. I'm going to break it down very shortly. And I know a lot of people had been requesting a video on this and wanted to get to the bottom of what this whole buzzword TFIDF was all about. And I apologize in advance. This particular type of optimization I had been testing for over a year, and for months and months and months, at least 6 months, I was not getting results from it. Finally, it started to turn the corner around March-April timeframe, and I actually started seeing results. And you know how it is with the lab, we're not going to go ahead and put something in that's not tested. So it took a long time in that regard. And on top of that, once I did start to see positive test results from it, it was kind of difficult to kind of pinpoint down what is the most efficient way to do it and which way is going to get the best result. So again, apologies for the delay, but as you know, I like to get everything perfect before release. And so here it is in its perfect form. So first off, for the people that don't know what TFIDF is, it's basically an algorithm that is used to rank documents or rank different web pages in our context based on the occurrence of words. So they're trying to figure out relevance, and they're going to rank different documents, different websites, web pages, whatever, what have you, based on how often specific words show up in the document. In the generic sense, they call them terms. What does TF mean? TF means term frequency, or how many times a specific term shows up in the document or the web page, divided by the number of terms in the document, or as you're probably used to hearing it, keyword density. So if you have a 500 word document, how many times does the word cat show up in it? If it's 5 times, then you have 10% or 0.10. And inverse document frequency, so how many times does that term show up in all the documents of the subset? So if we were trying to figure out, for example, what is the TF-IDF of, let's say, a specific web page, and then the sample set that we're looking at is all documents on the internet, then we'd have to normalize that against how many times the word cat shows up in all the web pages on the internet. This is what the equation looks like. TF-IDF equals the term frequency times the inverse document frequency. Usually this is a logarithmic function, so this doesn't have that big of an impact. But essentially what it boils down to is the term frequency will go up if you have a higher number of the keyword on the page or the term on the page. Inverse document frequency will bring it down if that's a very common word, for example. So if it's a word like the word of, that's going to show up very frequently in a lot of documents. So that's going to bring the total value down. But something rare, let's say like the word litigation, for example, is not showing up in a lot of documents on the internet. So term frequency, if that's showing up a lot on your page, if litigation shows up a lot, this number will be high. And then since inverse document frequency, this is a rare word in the world as compared to like the and of, that they won't be brought down as much. So this becomes more important of a factor. Okay, so that sounds a whole bunch of confusing, and guess what? You don't really need to know any of this at all. In other words, the way you really want to think about this is TF-IDF is basically niche specific keyword density. So what you can consider this as is basically tools and different software that will analyze your niche. They'll analyze your niche for the occurrence of specific words on the pages ranking on page 1. So for example, let's go with the word litigation again. Let's say you're trying to figure out what is the optimum keyword density. Should I put the word litigation on my page? Well, what a TF-IDF analysis tool will do is basically it'll analyze the people in the top 10 and see what is the optimal amount and what is the average or what is the sweet spot for you to put that in there to match the niche. So it's kind of like what we do for anchor text diversity, but for keyword density. Now, let me just talk about why this might be important. So in March timeframe, there was an update, and Google hardly ever talks about what they're putting in the updates, but they did this time, and they were saying it was about relevance. Here's an example from Search Engine Journal where they admit that it was about relevance. And then also in a Webmaster Hangout, they mentioned that the update was about relevance. Now, what does relevance really mean? I mean, in essence, relevance could just boil down to, does your content cover all the points successfully enough to answer the search query? So for example, if we wanted to figure out if my article on drunk driving litigation is applicable to the topic, for a robot, maybe a way that it figures that out is it just makes sure it reads the content, and it makes sure that I'm talking about all the topics related to drunk driving litigation. So am I talking about breathalyzers and blood alcohol levels? And one way for us to analyze and making sure that's okay is a TF-IDF analysis, just to make sure all those words are showing up in the content. Now, the interesting part about this is TF-IDF is a supplement to keyword research. It's going to get you to optimize your content for different words that wouldn't show up in keyword research. For example, let's say your keyword is best protein powder. If you're doing the recursive keyword research process, you're going to show up with a lot of keywords like this: protein powder reviews, protein powder with aminos or amino acids, lactose-free protein powder. So a lot of stuff that's just related to protein powder, and more importantly, it has search volume. Remember, the keyword research process is going to return you what are the search terms that show up in the document that whatever your reverse engineering is ranking for. There might be a lot of words in that document that's just not ranking for, but are applicable to the topic, which TF-IDF is going to suss out for you. Sorry for the typo there, it should be TF-IDF. But you might end up with words in the TF-IDF analysis like absorption rate, for example, or taste, or the word gym might show up in articles. And if you want to blend in with the coverage of the topic on page 1, then I recommend running TF-IDF analysis and making sure you're covering all these subtopics.